Any stories shared in this podcast have had names and details changed for the confidentiality of clients. Any resemblance to someone real is coincidental. Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for today's video. Today we are going to talk about another reason that therapy can not work for you or your progress can feel slow or stopped. And that is that sometimes people go to therapy to change for other people and not for themselves. Before we started filming while we were talking, Josh mentioned something I think that I hear pretty regularly, which is like, I'm here because my insert family member, husband, wife, whatever, told me I needed therapy. Why is that such a problem?
I would say, to begin with, it's not necessarily a problem. It's not a problem that maybe somebody else referred you to therapy or brought it to your attention that you needed therapy. But then what happens if you go to therapy and you really don't see a need for it, but you're going because somebody else told you that you needed to, and now you're trying to appease them?
Yeah, I would say every one of us, in whatever decision we make, there's usually a catalyst. And sometimes that catalyst is my wife telling me, hey, you need to X, Y, or Z. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. The challenge with therapy can be, okay, so now you're doing something that you're not very interested in doing. And depending on where the nature of the relationship is for whomever the catalyst was, you may now even carry a chip on your shoulder about it, right? I don't want to be here, but I'm doing it out of spite or whatever the case may be. And that can make change more difficult.
I think of before I worked here, and I worked doing therapy with people who were court ordered to be in therapy, right? They weren't there because they wanted to be. They were changing for the state, I guess, to make their probation and parole rules and to be compliant with all of those. And when we would talk to them about it, I think this applies to lots of things, right? Maybe you're not on probation or parole, but you have to go to work tomorrow. And if it's one of those things, it's okay, I'm here because my parole officer said so, or my wife said so, or my husband said so. That's fine because it got you there. And that's, like you said, I don't think that's a bad thing. But with these felons, it had to be, if you want to actually get something out of this, you'll have to then find reasons to do so. And I think that's probably kind of the direction we're going to go with this.
Right, because even if you come in initially not for yourself, eventually at some point there has to be some kind of buy-in on your end. Otherwise, nothing will ever change. And maybe you'll continue to kind of appease the person that got you to go in the first place, but it doesn't mean you're going to make progress in therapy.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about while you guys were talking is therapy oftentimes is based around change. And if you make change for somebody else, the likelihood of it being long-lasting is probably slim, because what you're doing is going through motions rather than creating change. Now, that's probably not the case all of the time, but in a generalized blanket statement, I would say that if you're doing things differently to appease someone else, you're going through motions versus creating lasting change. The other thing I would mention is it's been my experience occasionally that people aren't overly interested in making change, or even therapy for that matter, but the catalyst gets them there, and then they realize that therapy is not what they'd worked it out in their head to be, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this actually isn't as bad as what I thought. I feel like I hear that regularly, and then real change or real acceptance can start to take place, but then it's because it's you initiated rather than somebody else driven.
Yeah. What are some good self-motivated reasons to be in therapy, and how do people find those?
I think that, again, once you get into therapy, realizing that really it's just a space where you can better yourself. And so really, if you go to therapy and you're spending the hours sitting there and trying to find ways to appear better on the outside, it's never actually bettering what's on the inside of you. And so I think that starting with that kind of a perspective is really helpful, because coming in and not working on yourself or not working on what's going on deep down inside is just cheating you. It's the same hour to the therapist anyway, right? But it's just cheating yourself.
Yeah, what would be a good self-motivated reason for coming to therapy? I guess I would say if there's a part of you that's having difficulty functioning in a certain way, And let's take anxiety, for example, because I think it affects the majority of us. It just makes everything more difficult. If it's harder to fall asleep at night, if it's harder to focus your thoughts, if it's harder to have a desire to be around people and with people and have conversations. Like if your life just seems to have slown and like you're trudging through mud in just about every aspect, that'd be a great self-motivated reason to go find somebody just to see, like, am I missing something here? We did fun lunch earlier and I walked out and asked a question. I'm like, am I crazy? Jane didn't even hear the explanation. I was like, yes. Right? And so being open to that idea of just go get some feedback. If everything feels like it's just slowed down and is 10 times heavier, just go see somebody.
Well, and I would say if you're there saying somebody else told you you needed to go and you're going because they told you that, well, at least explore what's with you showing up because somebody else told you to, right? If nothing else, be honest about that part of it and spend some time exploring that, because if you're willing to go to therapy to try to improve a relationship, chances are there are lots of other things that you could be doing to try to improve that relationship as well that may work a lot better than sitting in a therapist's office with a whole bunch of stuff that you don't even care about working on.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably just something that's important. Another thing that I think is important, just maybe for anybody who's listening to this, is to think if you're the support person that's trying to tell somebody to go to therapy, maybe consider some of what we're saying as well. If you're telling someone to go to therapy, at what point is that no longer even helpful if they're not bought in?
Yeah. I think that this is like a principle that extends into almost like all areas of therapy, but if you're going to be there for whatever motivation, you then have the choice and the opportunity to get something out of it or not. But to get something out of it, you have to figure out like your reasons, right? And if you're the person on the other side, like what are your reasons for wanting this person to go to therapy, and like how much of that is actually in your control? And I don't know, we can make a whole video on like just worry about what's in your control, but
Right.
I got nothing to add.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this video, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We've got other videos for you to check out and more exciting things coming soon, so thank you.